country thinks they're one-eyed Cantabrians. Cantabrians think the rest of the country is jealous. And when it comes to rugby, they may well be right, but it's not Dan and Richie tonight. It is Bob and Jim. And a humdinger of a mayoral contest in our second largest city. The incumbent, Bob Parker, well known to everyone over the age of 30-something, is the man who used to say, "This is your life." Sorry, Bob. Mayor since 2007, when he won with a huge majority. But now the polls tell us behind our other guest tonight, Anderton, the MP for Wigram, in his 9th and last term in Parliament. Two high-profile candidates, both determined to win, but only one can be mayor. Now, what do you think of them? We want your feedback. Email us, campbell@tv3.co.nz, or tweet using the hashtag #CHDebate, all one word, #ChitchaDebate. We begin with opening statements. I'm going to toss a coin to see who goes first. Bob Parker, you are the incumbent. You want to call?
Yeah, heads.
It's tails. So, Jim, you are first. Jim Anderton.
Well, Christchurch lost 8,600 jobs last year. 1/3 of all the young people in Canterbury between 18 and 24 are unemployed. We've got an inner city that's dying. We need affordable housing there. We need to bring people back to revitalise it, and the council policies have paralysed development in the inner city. What we don't need is council decisions that spend millions of dollars bailing out a failed property developer, buying the name of an Auckland suburb to come down to the Garden City and tell us how to run flower shows. And we don't need councillors sent overseas to find out how to build sandcastles. What we do need is a change of direction in Christchurch, some leadership. We've got to have a centre of excellence for all the things that we do so well in Canterbury and get everyone working again for the People's City. That's what I'm standing for.
Jim Anderson, thank you very much indeed. Bob Parker.
Well, I started the job 3 years ago, John, and there were three really key things that our community told us they wanted sorted out. One of those was the rates that are going up at 8 and 9% per year, moving through into double figures actually, and there we've succeeded. We've brought the rates down to below 4% sustainably for the next 10 years in our long-term plan. That's been audited and signed off by Standard & Poor's, AA+, best credit in the country. The second thing we talked about was safety in Christchurch, and we've made huge headroads now with the boy racer issue. It's half the problem that it was. We've got more to do yet, and the central city area is much safer. We'll have figures out from the police, I think, to confirm my view that we are now New Zealand's safest metropolitan centre. And we said we'd focus on infrastructure, and I'll tell you more about that later. Thank you.
Bob Parker, hey, once a TV man, always a TV man. I want to start with a simple question, Bob Parker. If all of those things are true, why are we here? Why is the man who was 30,000 votes in front last election now behind in the polls, well behind if the polls are to be believed, the man who's standing beside you? What have you done wrong?
Well, I think the polls will actually show the gap is much closer. That was an early poll that was by Jim's team. But we're certainly on the back foot, and that was a wake-up call for me.
Why?
Well, I think it's to do with the way that we've made some of the more controversial decisions. If I look at the results that we've got back from the resident survey we've just completed, more than 80% of them say the city is going in exactly the right direction.
Okay, so why going to be returned with an increased majority?
Well, that may well happen yet, actually, because part of what I'll be talking about in the next few weeks is how we can correct some of the issues around communication. I think that's been the key, John.
Jim Anderson, why do you think Bob Parker is in the position he's in, and why are you running against him?
Well, one of the things that Bob just said is one of the reasons I'm here. Bob said that we ran the poll that was UMR. It's nothing to do with us. They published all the results.
Commissioned by you guys?
No, nothing to do with us at all. And that's the trouble with Bob. He says these things and they have no reflection on what really is happening. Bob's a great talker, I'll give him that, but he hasn't done anything. And that's the reason I'm standing, that basically over the last 3 years the council and the mayor have become disassociated from the communities of Christchurch.
I can think of one thing he's done, and credit credit's due. Boy racists, they were an unmitigated disaster in Christchurch when Bob Parker became mayor. They are less of a disaster now. You must admit that, mustn't you?
Yes, of course, and those sort of things are fine, but if you talk to the people in Christchurch, what they're really concerned about is that the local organisations, the community organisations hold the city together, that glue it together, get their funding cut. The poorest of people living in council houses get a 24% rent increase, and a property developer who's not doing all that well gets $17 million plus $1 million of interest a year, and people can't understand that, and particularly when those decisions are made in secret.
Can I come in here? Because I think lots of people outside of Christchurch may not know what Jim Anderton's talking about, Bob Parker. So I'm going to quote from Rebecca McPhee, the listener. On July 25th, the council voted at a closed meeting to buy 5 properties from troubled developer Dave Henderson for nearly $17 million. Done in a great hurry. There wasn't even time to get independent valuations before the meeting. In hindsight, that was madness, wasn't it?
Well, I think the decision was a really good decision. It's a strategic...
Why?
Well,
Why?
let me explain that to you. It's a strategic land purchase, first of all. We have $60 million a year in a fund.
If it was a really good decision, why did you do it in secret? Why did you do it in secret?
Well, you don't discuss the prices of purchase in public if you're going to buy properties. That's the first thing, because the prices will go up even more. So that's not a very sensible idea. But I tell you what we did. We said, because there are questions around the process here, and reasonable questions as well, let's get the Auditor General to actually go over this and say, did we fail in our process? The answer was that we didn't fail in the process. But looking back on it now, you could say, hey, in this market, you could buy the properties for less.
Okay.
We made a decision then to protect...
What are they worth now?
I don't know what they're worth.
Roughly.
Now, but honestly, I don't know.
They're worthless, aren't they? They are worthless.
They will be worth less, but the opportunity was priceless. We had a chance to pull together some key inner-city properties. They're absolutely a priority for the regeneration in the central area of Christchurch. We've put in place a master plan over those properties. We didn't want to lose that chance. It was in our long-term strategy. We discussed it with our community, and we stepped in and did the job.
The great irony of this for me is that you're meant to be the right wing and you're meant to be the left wing. Sounds like left-wing politics to me, Jim Anderton. Why don't you like it?
No,
why don't you like the city owning its own centre?
Of course, but if the city had stood aside and the failed property developer had failed without being bailed out by $17 million, they'd probably got him for a song. And nobody else is queuing up. You won't find any cranes on the skyline of Christchurch. So the City Council was standing in the marketplace as the only potential buyer, and they paid market rates for a property that's gone down in cost, in value, while at the same time they've been paying interest on the money they borrowed to pay the property developer. Every business person in Christchurch who knows anything about decision-making in business knows that was the most balmy business decision they've ever
And
heard.
you have had approaches from business people, Bob Parker, saying, what on earth were you up to?
Well, look, at the end of the day, you may have noticed we're in the middle of one of the biggest recessions on the planet. Now, when we stepped in and bought those properties at the beginning of that process, yes, it was prudent. Look, you cannot consult with your community around a massive regeneration project in the city based around cohesive pieces of land. Have some of those core blocks come up that you've already gone a long way down the planning process with, and then lose them. Have them cherry-picked, split up and broken for a whole bunch of other things. Okay. That purchase will pay dividends for our city in the years ahead as we move to regenerate the centre.
There's one thing about that. The council owns a lot of property. It owns, you know, what used to be bus stations and land all over the place. Why on earth weren't they developing those instead of bailing out Dave Henderson? I cannot for the life of me figure that out.
It was a bit of a bailout, wasn't it? He would have been in the proverbial without it, wouldn't he?
Well, he's in the proverbial right now.
Yeah, he would have.
So it wasn't anything about Mr. Henderson. This was about a city with a goal. Okay. A goal of regenerating a central city area. You need land to do that.
Okay, if Bob Parker's talking about a city with a goal, you keep talking about how many jobs have been lost in Christchurch during Bob Parker's mayoralty. I wonder if that's not a bit unfair. Let's look at the closures all layouts. Lane Walker, Rudkin, Pacific Brands, Bridgestone Tyres. In what way is the mayor responsible for a recession, a downturn, and tough times in the city? Tell me now, seriously, how you would have protected those jobs or how you would have created jobs.
Well, I was Minister of Industry, Economic and Regional Development for 6 years. And in the 9 years I was in the Labour-led government, we helped create...
Boom times.
No, the winter of discontent. Do you ever remember it? The business community was saying everything was going to hell in a handcart and the government was hopeless and it was all going to turn into disaster. And we had to go out there and sell it.
So we had our... Specifically, how would you create jobs in Christchurch?
We created in Christchurch 84,000 jobs at the level of 9,000 a year. This year we've lost 9,600.
As a minister, which is a lovely... As mayor, how would you create them?
Work with the government, work with the private sector, create centres of excellence in manufacturing and IT, in tourism and education and health, and in construction in Christchurch, to say that we have lost 2,500 jobs in construction, IT and manufacturing alone in the last year, all of them skilled jobs, and if we don't stop stop that leakage, we are going to be in big trouble, because when things return, we won't have any skilled workers to do anything with.
You haven't managed so far, although I see your mate John Keith's been down there hanging out with you, but you haven't managed so far to work well with central government in the way that Jim Anderton's describing, have you, Bob?
You've got to be kidding. We've got one of the best projects on with central government at the moment. I mean, one of the things that we have done during the recession is what all local governments should do. We've got out there and we've got stuck into construction work. We're keeping capacity in the city with a number of major projects. We've got a youth transition scheme in place for the young people in Christchurch, tracking all 15 to 19-year-olds to make sure that they can get a job. If they can't get a job, we're working with them to retrain them, get them into the places they need to go. This council's made a major commitment through its companies, through its own organisation, to keep capacity in Christchurch. Jim is talking like a minister from a Labour government, and we shouldn't probably touch on the scale of the debt that they ran up during that time, debt that would have crippled our city. I'm talking as a mayor.
Okay.
Now, a mayor cannot create something out of thin air.
Okay.
You work with people. We're definitely working with people, and especially government.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys.